You're listening to Reckless Creatives, a Pipeline Artists original podcast, where Sadie Dean and Jeanne Bowerman share the candid truth about the challenges and benefits of living life as artists. Before I do a whole little, this is Lee Jessup, blah, blah, blah. If you haven't heard about Lee Jessup, you're a loser.
Or have you been?
Right? In this industry and be a writer and not know who Lee Jessup is.
Listen, who the fuck am I? Truly.
That's going to be the title of the podcast episode. Lee Jessup, who the fuck am I?
Valid.
So Sadie and I today are here with Lee Jessup, who we all know who she is. Screenwriting career coach, has helped a ton of people, has helped personal friends of mine, and she is incredible. And if you haven't seen her on Symposium, I'll put some links to those in the show notes, and also to her incredible books, which every screenwriter should read, especially if you're right out of the gate trying to break in. There are so many things we could talk about, and I know there's a lot of things you talk about all the time, like the state of the industry, blah, blah, blah. I don't really care about the state of the industry. I think we all know it's a little difficult right now. Right? So,
I mean, welcome to our world. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe we should focus on what writers can do to sort of stand out in the crowd and what they should be focusing on while the industry is so difficult. And it doesn't mean they shouldn't query a manager or whatever, but let's start by just talking about stuff like client comes to you, Lee, I've got all these scripts. Ugh, the industry right now, I'm so, what the hell? What do you think I should be doing? I mean, we're just diving right in. Like,
listen, do we ever do it in any other way? You and I just go in hard and fast and and see what comes.
No one has time to just dilly-dally, you know?
No.
Exactly. Life is short, and let's put something actually meaningful out there. Not that we're not trying for that every day. That sounded ridiculously pretentious, but let's get to the nitty-gritty of it all. But here's the thing, like, as you're talking about it, the thing that popped up for me, the thought that popped up for me is that what I love about screenwriting is that it's a highly blue collar job. And what I mean about that is, to move your career forward, the first thing you have to do is roll back your sleeve and get to work in the writing. And the writing creates opportunity, right? And it's a unique job in this creative field, because every other job, director, actor, DP, music, whatever, is dependent on other elements, right? You can be a director all day long, but if you don't have actors in a set and some lines, then it's a problem. You can be a DP, but if you don't have anything to shoot, there's a challenge there. With writers, it really is about the writer and the page. And every story that we have, every success story we've ever had, started with a writer and the blank page, right? That's where it starts. And I love that writers can write their way into their own opportunities in ways that are really meaningful, even in times like this, right? And yes, the industry is in a contraction and things are challenging, but we also saw a huge spec sale in November 2024 that was kind of the sign of things really starting to turn around. Well, guess what? That was a guy who was unknown to the industry, who I don't know how many scripts he wrote before that or what was his track record, but he wasn't of the industry. And he wrote something that ultimately created all the opportunities, right? That ultimately got him represented and got a really glitzy, like once in a 5-year period sale for a new writer. It's not to say that every writer can generate that, but it starts with a blank page. And I think that in times like this, where the industry is challenged, to say the least, what every writer can do is really think about their writing, because that great writing is going to be as needed and as appreciated as ever. And writing and pushing your craft as a writer is incredibly important. And every writer who's listening to this can do that. Now, is that all they should be doing? No, because to build a career, you have to do more than write. And if I say just write, it's suddenly somewhere somebody is like, oh, just have to write a great script. Not that simple. I know how hard that is, and I don't mean it in a reductive kind of way, but their relationships to build, industry knowledge to gain. There are lots of things to do, even in times where the industry is difficult. And I do think that with the challenges of the industry, it also creates an opportunity to slow down, don't rush yourself. If you meant to have something ready on March 31st and it's not going to be March 31st, that's okay. Go for your best writing, build relationships, do that understanding that the industry is contracting and features are a more vibrant space right now, but it's an evolving industry. Everything ebbs and flows. And what you can do is just kind of assure what you'll have on hand when opportunity knocks.
I love how your dog is peeking through the curtains and
oh yeah, she's very much let me out of here. So I'm going to let her out of here.
She's looking for what's beyond the curtain in the industry.
She's looking for squirrels. Let's be completely honest.
That's her purpose. That's her purpose. That's
exactly.
Okay.
Blue collar job. Go find the squirrel.
She's going to be the best squirrel chaser ever.
I have a question for you, Lee. You've seen thousands of writers come through and break in, and for those who are trying to write a lot and better their craft and everything, is it better to stick to one genre or be genre agnostic? I feel like voice is voice and you could kind of put it wherever, but I'm curious for you, do you see it's better for just a writer, you're good with drama, stick with that, or no, you're a comedy writer, stick with that if you want to break in?
I think that the question is what sort of career does the writer want? Mm-hmm. Right? If the writer is I want to be a Hollywood writer, I want to, write my specs, but also get open writing assignments or go in for rooms or, whatever it is, then yes, you do have to think about brand because you want to get representation. Representation will talk about you as a thing, right? As a writer who does something specific. They will build you a fan base. If you're writing horror, they'll get you to Blumhouse and Neon and Monkey Paw and whatnot. If you're writing, meditative drama as your next script, none of those companies want to look at that, right? That's not what they do. And companies specialize in what they do as well. So I think that if you want to work in the industry, as part of the industry, then yes, you have to think about that. If you are in a position to raise funds to make movies, right? You don't need the industry. You don't want to work open writing assignments. You don't want to staff in a room. You're I just want to make movies and I have access to that. Then sure, write whatever you want. If you're able to get those movie produced, or if you are in a place where you say, I'm going to write in different genres, I'm going to bypass representation, and I'm going to go straight to producers that produce that. Sure, why not? But then you're just cutting yourself out from the representation game, which is not the wrong thing, for the record. I think every writer is different, and you really have to look at the career that you want rather than those milestones that people put out there as the things that you should have. If you're looking to write, romantic comedy, broad family comedy, a sci-fi thriller, a family drama, and a very bloody horror, and you have paths to producers, or you can find those paths, then no, you don't need a manager. A manager is going to go I don't understand what that is, and who are you? And I can't keep introducing you to people for the first time every time you write a new script. That's a lot of work. So yes, I think the most important thing is to think about what is the career that you want to have. Now, the caveat here is that, well, when you break in, you'll break in based on the script that broke you in, right? If you wrote a horror script, if you wrote a comedy script, whatever it is, and that's what's going to be expected of you for a time. And you will go and meet with companies. You'll have generals with companies that make that type of content. So they'll want to talk horror with you, for example, if it's the horror side. In time, you're always allowed to develop. First of all, you're allowed to have your outlier script, but that, I mean, one outlier script that you're listen, I do horror, but there's also this, family comedy that I really love that I had to write. And I know it's outside of my brand, but that's the thing. As you get bigger, as your career expands, and as you work with more producers and build your name, then you have a lot more permission to vacillate because people just want to be in business with you, right? So there was a huge comedy writing team that I worked with years ago that wrote a number of big summer comedy tentpoles, and came to work with me when they're we want to veer, we want to go to a different space. And we ended up with them developing a historical drama with a very big producer and a family drama with a very big director. But it's just that pivot and that expansion of what you do, which is, for the record, totally allowed once you get there. But I was talking to a writer the other day who came onto my screenwriter support group, and he broke in as a horror writer, which was never thought of himself as a horror writer. Before that, wrote a horror piece, broke in through horror, and now does horror writing assignments, had scripts on the blacklist, like sold things. And in time, he'll expand from there. But it's just, I think it speaks back to human nature of, when you build a house, you want an architect that built this type of house before. Same thing.
I want an architect that was I can just say to him, building this fabulous house, but have it cost 5 cents.
Right.
Exactly. But you know how to do it, so do it.
Oh my God. Let's not even go off into that architect building conversation. We just got done renovating an old 1780s house, and I don't want to see another contractor.
I understand that.
For a long time. What do you think about writers who should maybe take this opportunity to, you've got your screenplay, maybe write the short story version of your script and try to get that published, or adapt your screenplay into a novel? What are your thoughts on the multi-hyphenate approach while the industry is in a little bit of flux, to maybe stretch your muscles a little bit and
Listen,
see
I think that it's important to write in the formats that are calling you. It's funny, I was talking to a client yesterday who got signed off of a TV pilot and then met with an executive who was like, well, we're not doing a lot of TV right now. We're doing features. We'd love to see this as a feature. And we had a conversation about, do you want to adapt that feature to a pilot or that pilot to a feature? And ultimately the question was, do you want to lose the pilot? Because if you have a feature that has gone out, then you lose the pilot. I know the industry does a lot of like, well, if you had IP in place, wouldn't that be amazing? Which I get. It's, effectively using IP as a proof of concept and proving that there is appeal to a concept, to a world, to whatever it is that you are developing. This is probably unkind towards the industry, but I'm going to say it. I think it's a little lazy on the part of executives who are just afraid to go to bat for material. My least favorite is like, oh, just go turn it into a novel and have it published and sell 100,000 copies and it's going to be great. Well, that's really hard for the record. Like, it's not like, it's Tuesday. What am I going to do? I'm going to find a publisher and 100,000 copies. Here I come. So I get why it's that way. I understand the importance of IP. I would say if you want to write a short story that will be great as a short story, write a short story. If you have a novel in you that you really want to write, go write that. Interestingly, I work with a number of writers who've had success in the scripted space, as well as success in the literary space, but their novels never went book to film or book to TV for whatever reason. And it's really fascinating because you think like you're a big writer, you've written some, novels that have sold well. Naturally, all of these will be sold for IP, but not so much the case. So I think that it's important to remember that there's no guarantee of if I write this as a novel, it will then become a film. So I think it's really important to kind of listen to what satisfies you creatively. And if you want to write a short story, go write a short story. If you have something that you're like, this will be best treated as a novel, there's a lawyer friend who often says that the writer's job is to put boats in the water, and every script, every story, every piece of work developed is a boat in the water. And you don't know which one will hit, which one will land, which one will serve as the brake, but you put that boat in the water and you see what happens. And I think it's a really good mentality to think about it this way, is like, you don't know what will be the thing. You want to think about, where is the space that I can be most successful in? What can I do really well? How do all of the things that I do work together to create strategy? You think about all of those things, but it's your job to kind of continue to develop in whichever way, with the belief of you're a writer. It's your job to generate. It's your job to ultimately drive your craft and become a better creator, and have faith in the work and the direction that you're going. That it'll get you to where you want to go.
Or which boat will sink like the Titanic.
Or which boat will sink, or
right.
hit some land and stall, and that's the end of it. But if you put out enough boats, 1 or 2 or 3 will get there.
Yeah, jump on the other boat that's not sinking.
Exactly.
If you can reach it. Have you ever had a client or a writer who, I don't know, maybe was stubborn and was like, no, it's a book and I'm not going to adapt it, even though there's opportunities, like I'm going to make it this thing only. Have you ever butted up against it? You're like, hey, I think there is opportunity to branch out.
All the time. All the time. My rule with my writers is that for good or bad, you're going to hear everything from me. I'm going to tell you if you decide that you're going to write Screenplay World, an animated, rated NC-17 Western that is animated and has some musical elements in it, and you're like, that is the thing I have to write, I'm going to tell you how hard it's going to be and how unlikely we are to get it out to a lot of people because nobody makes that. But if you have to get that out of your system, I think it's really important that you write it. So I talk to my clients a lot about eventuality, right? You're doing this. What eventuality are you looking for? Like I was talking to a client of mine the other day who had written a number of features and was developing a feature who came back and was like, I think I want to develop this as a pilot. Now, the writer has never written a pilot, is not established yet in the feature space. Very, very talented, but just for all intents and purposes unknown to the industry. And she was like, I think I want to write as a pilot. And I had to stop and say, okay, what are your expectations? What eventuality are we aiming for with this pilot? She was like, well, I want somebody to pick it up and make it. And I had to say to her, in a world where nothing is impossible, but some things are less probable, considering that limited series are really kind of awarded to the Craig Mazins of the world, right? To the big showrunners who can bring big talent, considering that the industry doesn't love a limited series because the buyers spend a lot of money for limited viewership, right? 8 episodes, 6 episodes, however long. And being it that we're making less and less of them, and being it that you're not established in the industry, it is very unlikely that this will happen. So if you're aiming for the eventuality of seeing it become a limited series, the likelihood of that is very, 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 very low. Now, having said that to you, if you feel like, but I still want to write it as a pilot, sure, go nuts. Like, that is your choice. I'm going to give you the information and then I'm going to support you whichever way you want to go. It's your decision. It bears your name. It's your fight. I'm going to be here to support you no matter what. Kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's fair too. I mean, excuse me, it's nice to have that support, even though it might not be the best outcome for yourself, but if you're passionate to do it.
Exactly.
Do it,
and
right?
Listen, my rule with my writers, the writers that I work with, and I think, kind of the people that tend to seek me out, are the people that have embraced the idea that while it may be a dream, becoming a working screenwriting, having a career, a screenwriter, having a career as a screenwriter, at the end of the day, it's a job, it's a business, and you have to understand what that means. I think that aspirations are really important, and it's really great to aim for something that you have a great deal of passion for, but it's really also important to understand how it works, so that you know what you're going into. I mean, years ago, I worked with a writer, wonderful writer, super talented, who every year was submitting to the TV writing fellowships, right? That was the dance every year. And she was very much like, TV is my space. That's what I want to do. And at some point she went to a panel at Writers Guild Foundation that was made of TV writers who talked about the TV writers room. And she came to see me like 2 days after and was like, holy crap. Like, is that what a writer's room is? What?
You can swear here.
Holy fucking shit.
There you go.
There it is.
Is that what a writer's room is like? Because I do not want that. That does not appeal to me in the least. Like, is that what I've been trying to do all of these years with submitting to fellowships, getting to interviews, not getting, like, is that where we're going? And I was like, yeah, we've had these conversations. She left she's writing novels now very successfully, but she had that moment of like, oh shit, that is not what I want. I think it's really important for writers that are aiming at this, whatever this is, right? Whether you're working within the industry, whether you're producing on your own and fundraising or working with producers. Of course, there's like a best case scenario, worst case scenario. There are great rooms that are euphoric. I had one writer who started out in John Ridley's room, and he was like, We get to work at 11. We go to lunch at 1. We're back in the room at 2:33. We break story for another hour. Everybody goes home to do research. It was great. But that's not every
like
room.
that. Somebody
I know,
needs
but
to tell Matt, look, condense my hours.
I mean, it was nothing after that was the same. So for the record,
of course.
and he was like, I think I'm screwed because I think I'm starting in a way that's really going to spoil me.
Yeah.
And he did great. He's a showrunner now. He's amazing. But I think it's really important to understand what those eventualities are and what it looks like. And while it is great to aspire and to, have that dream that is powering you, to understand what the job is that you're going for and whether or not you want that job.
I think speaking to that, because you're talking about this, which I love, the practical side of this, like, eyes wide open, see what you're getting into to really be sure this is the career you want, whichever one of these mediums is the one you want. But also, there's always that story of somebody who does sell a script and then they're like, yeah, I'm a professional screenwriter now. And then they quit their day job. And it's like, well, maybe you don't want to do that yet. So let's just take this a step further. These people have worked on their craft. They're confident about which one of these areas they want to focus on. And now they do get something like either that first writer's room or that first spec script sale. Or maybe they get an open writing assignment. Can you maybe speak to like what they should be thinking about for the next step?
Sure. So if you do get staffed in a writer's room, or if you get a support staff position in a writer's room, quit your job because it's a full-time thing and you will be expected to do what you do when you do. You're going to be expected in the room. The challenge that you have to remember that may be waiting for you on the other side is that most rooms today are not broadcast network rooms, right? Broadcast network rooms, are responsible for about 10 to 15% of our content right now. And those are rooms that go for long episode orders, right? Long season orders. So you get 20, 22, 18 episodes, but that is going to become about 40 weeks of work in a year. And you're going to make good money because it's all guild. You can't work outside the guild in the world of TV. So you're going to make good money, and then you're going to have like 12 weeks off if the show is indeed coming back for a second season, bring you back. But if your first staffing gig is on a Netflix, Apple, Amazon, anybody show. I had a writer, I talked to an EP of mine the other day who just got off of a 7-week room. That was the length of the room. And she was talking about, now I have to figure out how to continue to keep the family above water while I get my next gig. So for TV writers, it's important to understand the importance of, I said important one time too many there, so bear with me. But it's critical to understand the importance of writing both features and TV, because if you are on a TV show, usually when you walk in, you will be signed to a 3-year contract unless it's a limited series. That means that you have to be, should you be invited back to the room, which is at the showrunner's discretion, you have to be available when that room opens again. So you can't take another job if it makes you unavailable for that show on the TV side. However, you can't take film open writing assignments. So understanding how the two can work in harmony to create the financial security that you need is incredibly important. And if you do get a writer's room, you're going to have to be there full time. Of course, if you have a super flexible and supportive boss who's like, you have 10 weeks that you have to be away, that's fine. We're going to hold it down for you. You go do the thing and then come back and see if you still want that job. If you have that, great. I'm not going to stop you, because getting that second job then becomes the big task ahead, the big boulder that you have to push uphill. But in many cases, quit your job and see what happens, because you are going to be expected in the room with your showrunner, whether it's a Zoom room or live room. Most rooms now are going to some element of live components, because Zoom rooms that really emerged during the pandemic are just really draining and really hard. If you get an open writing assignment on the feature side, on the TV side, at the end of the day, nobody knows when you're writing. And if you have a way of balancing your job with responsibilities for your OWA, great, go for it, do it. I do believe that financial security is actually really important for your sanity and your ability to create. People don't create well from a place of insecurity and fear. A lot of those early open writing assignments, if it's not TV, may be if-come deals. So what that means is that money is not going to change hands until the project itself is funded. So oftentimes those first assignments are going to be effectively work that you do with delayed pay, if there is pay. There are open writing assignments that are under WGA signatories, and you're going to immediately get paid. Whether you're getting paid immediately or not, there needs to be paperwork in place. If it's an IFCOM deal, the terms of the IFCOM deal need to be spelled out. And that's where we want to have an entertainment attorney working with you so that you can make sure that the eventuality is what you want it to be. And listen, when it comes to selling a feature spec, which we don't do a lot in this market, especially with material that is unpackaged. And by unpackaged, I mean doesn't have additional elements like name actors, name director. You have to be really cautious with that. I mean, I have writers who've had scripts on the blacklist that have been packaged but not sold yet, who are still working day jobs because you have to sustain, right? Starving is not going to help us in the pursuit of this career. Do I have writers that sold scripts for big, huge bidding wars and made a ton of money and moved out here and bought a house? Yeah, I do. Do I know writers that I know a particular writer, and I'm not going to name him, even though I know that he would be fine with it, but he surfaced through a big screenwriting competition. He was in the finalist list, or like top 25 or whatever it was. He sold the script for what was a fair amount of money at that time, significant, not insignificant, even at all in any way, shape, or form. I think it was around like $500,000-$600,000. Wrote a lot and decided to quit his job and come to LA. But he came to LA and also he had representation, but his feeling on it was like, I don't want to do open writing assignments. I only want to write specs. That's all I want to do. Writing and selling specs is a very hard gig, right? I mean, I actually work with somebody who came to work with me because he was only selling specs and didn't have open writing assignments. And he was like, I sold to like Skydance and Netflix and, a bunch of big buyers. He was like, it's going to run out. I'm going to get a script out there that nobody's going to buy, and then it's going to be over. And I need to figure out how to get assignments, which my reps are like, keep writing and selling because it's a shit ton of money and isn't that great. So it's, that the first writer that I talked about who did well in the competition and sold a script didn't want open writing assignments at all, didn't want to be in a room, didn't want to do any OWAs, didn't want to develop content on that front, wanted to write specs and sell them. And we're just not in a spec selling environment in that specs don't sell in mass. Do we hear about it? Yes. Does it happen? Absolutely. The more traditional path right now is for a script to get attention, to get a producer attached. The producer then goes on to attach talent, to attach a director. And then once the package is ready to go out, then it goes out to buyers, and then they will buy the piece. And that can be 2-3 years in the making. And the important thing to remember is that when the material is sold, right, everybody has to make their deals. Talent will get their deal first because it's their participation that the buyer feels guarantees a certain number on ticket sales, on box office, on foreign sales, domestic sales, whatever. So it's going to be talent, it's going to be director, then it's going to be producer, and the last one, if it's a relatively new writer, is going to be the writer. So even if a buyer comes in and says, we're doing this, we're buying this for X amount of dollars, the writer then unfortunately still has some waiting time, whether it's a month or 2 months or 3 months, for their deal to get done. It's an
and then they have to share it with their reps, percentages, and
then the reps
all that,
are going
right?
to take 10% to the agent, 10% to the manager, 5% to the lawyer, whatever that looks like. But I know that it's very easy to listen to this, and I listen to myself talking about this and I'm like, oh my God, it's the worst business model ever. But it's important to remember that oftentimes on the feature side, producers are working on spec as well, right? Nobody's paying them to take your piece out and package it and put it together. The business model really changed for the industry around the 2007-2008 strike, where buyers were like, we no longer want to take chances on naked specs to see if we can then put them together and make a movie of it, because we bought a bunch of specs in the 90s and early aughts, and we're like, those didn't go on to become movies, and we spent a lot of money and a lot of time on things that ultimately didn't come together. So instead of the buyers doing it, they're looking for producers to put together that package. Now, the flip side is that if there's a really hot piece of property that everybody's really excited about, attachments can happen fairly quickly. I mean, we've seen material go we've seen. It's not, there's no space in which you sit and observe this, but you hear about it from people in the industry like, oh, this script went out on a Tuesday, and by Thursday, this big actresses company had their hands on it. And they're like, we're willing to come in as producers and we're going to attach our star to it. And we're going to take that package that is now kind of like an evolved package that evolved over 48, 72 hours to Amazon, because Amazon's been wanting to work with this actress. So we're bringing that project in there. And suddenly you're like, how did this happen in 3 days? And we have star attached and the whole thing. That can happen. It's just runs a gamut of time of, few days, few weeks, all the way to months and years.
And I think it's so amazing that actors are, I don't know for how long, taking more control over their careers by creating production companies and actively looking for material that's more than just what their agent would hand them. I love that.
You see things like Reese Witherspoon and Hello Sunshine that sold for $900 million. You look at Margot Robbie, who's on the forefront of not only creating content, but creating a path for the type of roles that she wants to see for women in film. And she will also look at more. She did an incubator with Christina Hudson a few years ago that was all like, more women need to be writing action. So we're going to do an incubator for female action writers, and we're going to take it out. And they sold every single pitch they developed in that room. You see Issa Rae stepping up and doing some great work as a creator, rather than just as bear with me, writer or actor, which she has done very successfully. But I love seeing that. And I think that there is an appetite for more stories, more types of stories, more types of characters, not everything being told, for example, in the action world through a very specific point of view, of something that Tom Cruise could have played at some point in his career, right? We are no shade on Tom Cruise, but we're looking to diversify because ultimately I find that audiences are curious. Audiences want to see characters in movies and TV shows and points of view that we haven't seen before. And I think that's part of the benefit of everything being available at your fingertips. Like if you want to see something that, that has been done recently that is available on streamers, all you have to do is go back and find it, right? We don't need to make the next ... right? Which was a lot of what the 90s were about, right? There was this, and, either you can't find it at the video store or, only libraries carry this title or whatever it is, but there's a place for the new one because the old one is not readily available. Now the old one is right there at your fingertips. So that means that in order to continue to tell new and interesting stories, we need to step outside of what we've done before or evolve that in a way that gives something fresh and new that speaks to where we are culturally today, where we're going tomorrow.
I think our town has like the last video store in it. It's called Video Visions, and the man who's owned it for a very long time just passed away. And it was just the most amazing. It's literally like you go to this building, it's literally like you're stepping back into like 1980, and down to like the linoleum floor and all the videos. He's got rows and rows of videos. He even has like old Nintendo games. And everyone in town, this is a tiny town I live in, little one traffic light, 4,000 people town. And everyone is just like crying over the thought, like people would literally keep those TVs that had the VHS tape on it just for his store so they could watch it. Like, yeah, it's really sad. Yeah.
Listen, I drove by what used to be Vidiots here in LA the other day. I was with my cousin who does not live here, was just visiting. And I had this moment of sadness. And she was like, what was it? Like, I think it's a restaurant or a bar, whatever it was. She was like, what was this place? And I went to a nostalgic rant about how amazing Vidiots used to be, where you used to go and find all the foreign and art house titles, and a bunch of mainstream stuff too. But it was really just a place for movie lovers to congregate and find gems that they have not watched yet.
I feel very grateful that my children had the experience of being able to visit that store when they were little, like when no other town had one.
It's so cool. Well, the good news is Vidiots is back. I mean, not to what they were in all their glory back in the day, but at least there's hope.
Yeah, there's a presence for sure.
Yeah. Taking a minor step back, for those who are just breaking in, and maybe had the great opportunity of landing representation like a manager, and are working with them for maybe a year, 2 years, and they're not seeing any traction, any movement with their work. What would you say to those who are maybe scared or embarrassed to be like, this manager isn't working for me, but I feel like I owe it to them because they found me and are taking a chance, but my career is not moving the way I thought it would. Like, maybe it's time to find someone new that is aligned with you. But I feel like a lot of writers kind of get stuck or scared that they're going to let them down or be perceived weirdly, or I don't know.
Is this a how do you write a Dear John letter to your manager?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that ultimately, at the end of the day, it's better to have no manager than a manager who's not doing anything, because a manager who's not doing anything, you're sitting there and hoping and waiting that they will get active on your behalf. It's kind of like that, the boyfriend who never shows up, or the girlfriend who never shows up, or, you have a mate, but you're always sitting home on the Saturday night and you hope that one day they'll call you and you'll be like, okay, it's Saturday 2 years later, but here we are. Let's start fresh. We are, I think notoriously optimistic. And I think there's a lot of security that comes with the idea there's a representative who is there for me. But I think you really have to evaluate first and foremost, like, what have you been doing for the rep to be able to go and work for you? So if you signed with a rep, and we'll go through a number of different scenarios, but if you signed with a rep 2 years ago and you've not given them anything now, it's limited to what they can do with the thing that you gave them 2 years ago. They're like, great, let me get it out to 5 people, 10 people, whatever, but you haven't given me anything new, so I can't really do anything. Or if you've written stuff that they told you not to write or that they didn't know about, and they're like, well, I can't really do anything with it. Like, I'm really happy that you wrote that animated NC-17 rated Western, but I can't really do anything about it because there are no buyers for that. So you have to look at your contributions. You have to look at your expectations. So, I'll talk to writers who'll be like, well, my manager hasn't gotten me any showrunner meetings. There are no showrunner meetings to be gotten at the moment, right? The industry has stopped that. Showrunners are hiring, whether it's their friends or people that they know, people that they heard of otherwise. That idea of a rep getting an unknown writer into a showrunner meeting, like, that is not happening. Staffing is happening a lot more through personal relationships, reputation. The only exception to that is if you had a hysterectomy in Rwanda, and the story itself, the pilot, is all about a woman getting a hysterectomy in Rwanda and what that is like. Like, okay, you have very specific lived experience that we're going to try and surface to the showrunner because it's all about reproductive rights in Rwanda. Not that I have anything to say. I have plenty to say about reproductive rights. Nothing about Rwanda. But it's, are your expectations the right expectations? And if they are, and your rep is not doing anything for you, then, I think it's time to talk to the rep and say, like, listen, I have some concerns. We talked about us doing ABC, and I don't even think we've done A. And you asked me to write this feature, and I wrote it, and you noted it, and you loved it, and you got to a place where you said it was great. But to my knowledge, it's not gone out anywhere. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned that the things that we had talked about are not taking shape. I think it's always great to use the timeline. We're in the beginning of the year. Let's sit down. Let's have a strategy session, because I'm concerned that some things didn't happen that last year. And I know it was a hard year for the industry, but would love to talk about what we're going to do this year. If the manager is still not stepping up and doing those things, then I think that is the moment to and you've given them enough times and touched base with them and they're not responding or kind of hemming and hawing, then at some point you have to step up and say, listen, I really appreciate everything you've done for me. You've been great. I appreciate the faith that you've put in me and everything that you've contributed to my writing, to who I am. And I'm being verbose here, so you get the gist of it. But I think it's
not you, it's me.
Yeah, I think it's time for us to part ways. I've had writers go as far as, I know that right now you're really looking to develop things that you can sell, and I'm looking for more kind of long-term career development.
I want to also talk about those writers who aspire to be writer-director, and they'll get a rep for their script, but the rep maybe is just focusing on the writing because it's probably very difficult for them to get them a job as a director. So, like, what is a realistic path for somebody who wants to be a writer-director, and maybe what should they focus on that might help those get eyeballs on their directing, not just their writing?
So for a writer director, you have to be a maker. It's not, I'm writing and I would like to direct, but I haven't directed anything, period, or I haven't directed anything recently, which is quite a burden because, as you guys know, making anything is not simple. It's a Tuesday, let's make a short. You have to get together. Yeah, you have to have the script. You have to have the friends. You have to ask for all the favors. But making is incredibly important in that side of things. So as a writer director, you really have to figure out, are you truly a writer director? So that means, do you have to write everything that you direct and direct everything that you write? If you're not, you may opt to break in as a writer first or as a director first. If you are looking to direct, you should be a maker all the time, but you should also, it does open another avenue for you, which is all of the fellowships that are out there for directors. Whether they're the broadcast network fellowships or, there's a coalition of women's directors, like there's a lot of different organizations that are there to promote directors who also write, or writer directors, however they position themselves. But you have to remember that you have to continuously have an eye towards making things and strategy for those things. So like proof of concepts are incredibly important. If you're developing the proof of concept, develop the feature as well so that you're able to get it out there and speak to that. Or are you developing a body of work? What does it look like? So you really have to think about how can you be a consistent maker? I'm not talking about making something every 3 or 4 months. I'm talking about a year, 2 years tops. Like I work with a writer director who this past summer shot 3 shorts, 1 documentary, 2 narrative, has a feature already evolved for one of the 2 narratives. The other, she is now getting a deal on to go write the feature version. So you do have to have this churn and put that many more boats and well-built boats out on the river, because directing is a craft and a technical skill, much like writing, and you have to show your ability in doing that. I think you also have to understand the journey of directors, right? If you've never directed a feature, nobody is going to give you that $12 million feature unless you come from a huge special effects background and you're able to put together a short. And there was a short years ago that was put together by a director who ended up going to direct Maze Runner, but his short looked like a $500,000 short. I mean, looked amazing. That's not the expectation for everybody else, but you have to understand kind of like the gradual progress. So if you've never done a feature and you're developing a first feature, probably don't make it a $20 million feature unless your proof of concept is so amazing that somehow it allows you to slide into that, but that's very unlikely. Like, even if you look at like the Rian Johnsons of the world, right, who's really had a career that is all about growth and now is an uber successful director who directed Star Wars series content. He started with Brick. That was $500,000. From Brick, he went to Brothers Bloom. That was $6 million. Then he went to Looper, and that was 12 to 20, whatever it was. But there is that gradual growth. So it's understanding what you can get as a director and how to make your life easier. I often talk to writer directors who have written themselves into a $20 million movie that they're just going to have a very difficult time raising funds from the traditional industry for, because of a lack of track record. The flip side of it is that I work with a writer who broke in as a writer and always wanted to direct, right? He always made shorts. He also always, kind of saw that as part of the vision, but his reps told him very clearly when he broke in on a very big sale, like, we're going to focus on writing for the next 5 to 10 years, and then we can build up directing if that's okay with you. And he was like, that's fine. I'll go with that. So you really have to decide what's palatable to you and what are the things that you can do to present yourself as a director or as a writer director, rather than just saying, I want to direct.
Luckily, I don't have any desire to direct.
Yeah, zero. I took a directing class at some point. I was like, because everybody's like, you're right, you should look to direct. Oh no. Sorry. Granted, I was young, but I was like, I do not have that vision. Like, I took a class with somebody who went on to become a fabulous, brilliant director who's very successful now. and we shot shorts. And I remember her short, I was like, that is a director, which is what
Yeah.
I clearly not.
Yeah.
So it's good to know where you can succeed and where you really can't.
I think like I did a short film years ago, a decade ago, but I purposely had somebody else direct it, a different cinematographer, another person who's an editor, because I knew I didn't want to be a director, but I wanted to know what that experience was like,
Mhm.
even with just a little short film, to have my words interpreted by all these different people. And I think as a writer, it's a really good experience. And even if you just do it costing no money with a bunch of your friends, it never enters festivals, never does anything like that, but just have that experience of having your words interpreted by other artists and creatives. And also will teach you a lot about how much dialogue you don't need.
Yeah. And listen, I will sometimes I'll talk to writers who'll be like, I'm making a short. And I'll ask them what eventualities, what are we trying to get with it? Well, I hope that I'll get a feature out of it. Well, no, a short is usually a director's vehicle, but it's not to say that you can't gain other things from it. I think it's really important to be on a set. I think it's really important to understand how things are made. I think it's really important to understand who are the partners on a film that you work with. I think all those things are really important. And I actually think that writers, directors, we as a society, I think that we are driven by purpose in a way that sometimes can be counterproductive. So I think it's really good to be on a set. Will it impact you in any immediate way? Like people are like, okay, so you want me to go to the set and talk to who? The producer, so they'll read my script? No, just go to the set and see how that works and sit with it. Bring it home. Keep it in mind as you're writing the next thing. I think what you did, kind of having writers read back your work, having your work performed, understanding what it feels like to have it on its feet, understanding how a set functions. All of those are critical.
And you might also realize maybe I want to be, oh my gosh, look what the script supervisor does. Like maybe I want to, how do you do that? And you got to talk to them about what their job is. And, there's just so much to learn, even if you just, if you don't write something and you don't want to make a short, but just volunteer for your friends' shorts and go on set and see.
I would also say if you want to be a TV writer, go be on set, because you will have to produce your episode. And sometimes it happens that the first time that you're on set is you're on set for your episode. But I do think there is benefit to having been on set before. And not all sets are exactly the same. And people would argue that TV sets are, have much bigger budgets than any indie movie. But if you want to be a TV writer, you are working towards producing your episodes, right? That is the path. In a perfect world, and this doesn't happen all the time now because the majority of our content is not made by broadcasters, but the world of concurrent development and production is one that people are always looking towards, and is really kind of like the best TV making school that you can go to. But in those eventualities, like I have a writer who's on set for a broadcast show this week, and she luckily went and did some shorts just to figure out the flow of things and how do you take a project from early prep all the way through to post, because guess what? She's going to be done with set this week. Next week, she's going to be in post. And while she'll be back in the room, she will be chiming into post and watching cuts and, doing all the things that you do in post. So I think that if you're looking to create on the TV side, engaging in some production work is going to be really important.
Absolutely.
I think that's the one thing for aspiring TV writers that they often haven't quite grasped or understand is the production side of your episode. And I think for aspiring feature writers who write specs, a lot of times they don't grasp that concept that you were talking about earlier, that how I'm going to survive is open writing assignments. And I'm not going to be writing specs for the rest of my life. I mean, maybe, you're like the one lottery winner who can do that. But I think so many people are like, no, I want to write my stories. And, it's, again, another important reason why you have to understand the industry and do research. And just like you said, with the client you had was like, oh no, I don't want to be a TV writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about understanding what the job is. That while it is a dream, and I understand all of the passion and romance that goes into it, I'm not knocking it at all. I mean, I get with people that feel that, and that's what's driven them to be where they are now. I think it's just about understanding the spectrum of what the job is, and also as storytellers, I do find that especially TV writers will, if they get to like suddenly go and spec something, which they've not done before, or spec a TV episode, after writing pilot after pilot after pilot, oftentimes the response will be like, oh, this is so great. I don't have to come up with anything. I don't have to come up with the rules. I don't have to come up with the engine. I don't have to, nothing. I just get to like take the toys out of the box, play with them a little bit, and then put them back. Granted, we're only speccing now for one fellowship, which is the Paramount TV Writers Mentoring Program. But I think that there's a lot to be said for original stories and writing the stories that you want to write. But I think that when you go out on an open writing assignment, and the thing is, people tend to be worried that, oh, I'll have to go and I'll do an open writing assignment. It's something I would never write. Well, if something you would never write will never be brought to you. Right.
Mhm.
And you still get to pick and choose, right? You get to, once you have a little bit of a reputation, people come to you with this IP or that idea or whatever. You can say, okay, this is really up my alley. I can do something interesting with that, or that thing is really just not my jam. But there's some freedom in developing things that are based on somebody else's parameters, and working with somebody on that, as opposed to constantly originating story, because it sounds great. But I find that at the end of the day, a lot of writers are not naturally idea people. They're not I had 3 great ideas by the time I had my coffee in the morning. Like most writers are like, I fought for this idea for 6 months and it's still
Right.
there. So there's hope. And when you've generated a lot of original content, you get a little bit of like, what now? So having those assignments or having staffing opportunities actually refreshes that for you and takes some of that pressure off. And it's all about finding the balance that's right for you as a writer.
Yeah.
I have a lot of ideas of how much chocolate I want to eat each day.
Yeah, send me some of that, please.
Yeah, that's important. That's just living
Chocolate
your life.
every day, man.
Yeah.
Life is hard. Life is hard. Gotta have some chocolate.
You gotta do it. You gotta do it. Going back to your client that went to that Writers Guild Foundation panel, I just want to go back to that, just like the importance of the reality checks of the business and seeking out those opportunities to go to those panels, and especially with the beauty of technology. And we have Zoom. There's so many stuff. There's so much online now that it is important to listen to other people. And it's like, they can listen to you all day and they're like, yeah, of course you're going to say these things. But then as soon as they open the door to something else and someone's like, this is really what it's like, it does help you reflect and get a better understanding and hopefully inspire you to continue down that path or seek the next thing.
Yeah, listen, I think it's important to get a scope of opinions, right? A gamut. Don't take it from one person. Like,
Yeah.
when you're talking about, I remembered years ago, I was in Chicago for a speaking engagement. My husband and I were there, and our son was, I think, 2 years old, home with my parents. And we got to Chicago and we instantly fell in love with it. And we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Look at this, the whole other world. And we love it so much. And so very quickly, my husband and I, being kind of the investigators that we are, started talking to people who had kids that we knew that I was seeing through this speaking engagement and friends of friends and whatnot. Like, so what is it like raising kids in Chicago? And specifically, everybody's like, oh, but the winter. So talk to us. And we talked to a bunch of people, and all of them were like, it's worse than you think it would be. It's like the worst thing ever. And it's going to be so much worse than anything you can imagine. You hear it from one person, you're like, okay, maybe they're just dramatic. Then you hear it from like 3 or 4 other people. You're like, maybe we need to not move to Chicago with a 2-year-old and a dog. Not that we're always looking to move, but it was one of those things that was suddenly like this amazing city that we're like, maybe it's the right thing for us. It's not. So I think it's important to get a variety of opinions. And if they're all pointing you in one direction that is not the right direction for you, then that's something to keep in mind. I mean, I can tell you I've had writers in great rooms. I've had writers in terrible-ish room. I don't think they're as terrible as they used to be. I've had writers in rooms that was just a job. Right? That was the job and it was fine. And, they did the job, and it's usually going to be mandated and dictated by the showrunner and how they run things. But get a lot of opinions. Like, there are terrible open writing assignments that, lag forever. There are others that are super efficient and move effectively and quickly, and the collaboration is great. But the truth of the matter is that usually if you are a working writer and you have the opportunity to do an open writing assignment with a particular producer, you're going to call your friends and you're going to find who else worked with this person and how was that experience. And if you're going into a writer's room with a particular showrunner, you're going to talk to people who worked for them before. You're going to talk to producers that you know that might have worked for them. So you're going to try and do that investigation. For the record, if you're in very early, not very early, but if you're in a career stage where you're considering a manager, try to talk to other people who have been repped by that manager, right? Look online, look at their lists, like find ways to get that information to figure out whether that is the right fit for you.
And also look at that manager's social media and the producer's social media, because if they're like just like a freaking out hot mess, you might be like, whoa, whoa, that's a lot. Like I don't want to know that much about your life. You know?
You have to investigate. I mean, listen, I can tell you, like a few months ago, Final Draft asked me to come in and interview Eric Kripke, who is the showrunner of The Boys and created Supernatural and wrote a number of features. And yeah, I knew people that worked for him, and I was in the privileged position to reach out to said people and just say, like, what should I know? And it was really great to be like, oh, he's great. You're going to be fine. You know, you guys are aligned on this, and that. I wouldn't have mentioned it if somebody had come to me and said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You're going to interview Eric Kripke. That sucks. Clearly, we would not have gone in this direction, but you always kind of try to suss it out. And I do think that there is a writing community out there. And one of the things we started out on, like, what can writers do? I think fostering that community, making friends, building that network becomes really important because, you know, I had a writer who was paired with a particular, was not paired. It was discussed that a particular showrunner would pair with them on a show. And we instantly, the writer and myself, started making phone calls to everybody that we knew that worked with that proposed showrunner. And it came back as a hard no. So it was a hard no.
Wow.
So you build that community so that when you need it, it's there. I think a lot of people look at it as like, well, I don't have a need right now. No, go make friends. Like, your friends will be there for you when you need them, and you'll be there for them when they need notes or when they need input or whatever. But it is about building that healthy, thriving community that can celebrate the good times with you, give you the answers that you need, and kind of lament the difficulties with you.
I also think with people networking, they think there's some sort of magic pill to it. But you know, they always say it's who you know and all of that. But it takes time and you need to nurture it. And it has to be organic. So there's not like some magic secret to getting to know people in the industry. It's just a slow process. And then all of a sudden you look back 5-10 years down the road, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I know so many people. And those people who started off with you are now moving up the same way. And now they know other people, and like I always say to people, just don't suck. Like, don't just, and I mean that, like, don't be a sucky writer, but also don't be a sucky person. Like,
absolutely,
you know, and then people are going to want to help you. They're going to be like, oh, you know, who'd be great for this project? You know, it's like, I remember having a meeting with Len Amato from HBO in a Manhattan bar. You know, we had this rushed meeting. It was like, okay, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be there. Like, okay, we can meet at this bar. And I remember him saying to us, you know, send the script and don't know if we're going to like it. But if we like your writing, one day down the road, this is all about relationships. And one day down the road, I might say, you know, we've got this project, and you know who'd be a great writer for this? Jeannie would be a great writer for this. And then we're going to pick up the phone and we're going to call you. So he's like, these all things just happen organically and they take time. It's about reading your work, getting to know you as a human, you know, and maybe what kind of bourbon you like.
Absolutely. And listen, I think the key is, like, go make friends.
Yeah.
Means go connect with people that you like, that you genuinely like, they genuinely like you back. There's some common thread there. Go make friends. Networking is bullshit. Don't go and do that with people that you naturally don't like. Like, you're not going to want to help them and they're not going to want to help you. So go make friends. Make friends that you want to shoot the shit with, make friends that you want to talk scripted content with, make friends that you want to listen to when they're going through difficult things. if we're talking networking, like the saying is best networking happens in the spirit of curiosity and generosity. I think that friendships are built the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, if we're looking at this as not just what do you need from me? What do I need from you? That is going to be the currency of our friendship. That's not going to be well done. But really look at who would you genuinely just want to go have a coffee with or a dinner with? Who are you interested in? Who are you curious about? Because, it's like because of my work with Final Draft and the Big Break competition, we just had the winners tour, and I'd put together a lunch for our winners with a bunch of manager friends, which we haven't done this lunch in a while, so I've not had a chance to do it. But I invited a bunch of my friends in representation, and there are a few people there that I've not seen in a while. But, we always had this spirit of friendship between us. So we were sitting around talking about each other's kids.
Mm-hmm.
What are they into? What are they doing? What's going on? What are the challenges? Like, somebody said to me a long time ago, it's not being in this industry is not a job, it's a lifestyle. So you want to populate said lifestyle with people that you like. I had a lunch with a manager friend right after the fire. So like a week after the fires, he drove out, and we had a planned lunch. We had set this up like a month before, but most of our conversation was about, again, like kids, industry, buying homes in Los Angeles. Like there was so little at the end of the day that was business, because the way that it works and the way that it works when you're in the industry is you make a ton of friends and you go have dinner and you talk about having, this person just got engaged and where are they going to get married and what does it look like? And, this person purchased a music business. How did that happen? Let's talk about that. And then at the end of the conversation, you get to the 5 minutes of like, how can I help you? What do you need? Here's what I need. Okay, keep an eye out for that. And that's it. But that is kind of the dance that we do that is very much about, we've known each other for a long time. And listen, I've been in this industry forever. And now I see these relationships that 20 or 25 years ago, I was like, why are we going to lunch again?
Right.
Now, all these years later, you're like, no, that's my friend. And your kid should have just turned 10. And, you were performing in local musical theater. And how's that going? And it's just because it's an industry that is so all consuming, you want to go through it with people that you like.
Mm-hmm. My husband and I have this thing with, we've got a lot of friends, but we also have this group of friends who we call our trench worthy, where if we were in a war, who's coming in my trench? And so sometimes we'll be like out to dinner, we'll meet some new people, whatever. And then as we're driving home, I'm like, oh yeah, no, they're not in the trench. Like they would not hold their own. They would not work as hard as us. They would be dead in 2 seconds. And I'm not dying to save their ass. Like they're not gonna make it. But I think that when it comes to being in business with people and being on boards with people and, collaborating with people, I want to collaborate with the kind of people who would be in my trench, who are going to have my back and I'm going to have theirs. And anybody else who I feel like is just riding along on the coattails, no, I don't think so. I don't need to drag you.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that it's true for the business as well. Like people bring into writers' rooms, writers that they like, that they're in the very least, like I can see myself at 9 o'clock at night being in the room with this writer when Network just got back to us with notes blowing up the outline. And there are 4 people in the room and we have to parse out acts to different people and then do a blend and hopefully have something to send within 48 hours. Like this is the person I want to do that with. Right? Or this is the person, I really like this person and they're really smart. Of course, I'm going to bring them in for a writing assignment after general because I like them and I want to see what they'll come up with. Not only do I respect their kind of the intellectual space that they live in, but I know their writing is going to be challenging and we're going to have disagreements. So let's start from a place where we like and respect each other.
Yeah. Well, we like and respect you, Lee.
I'm lucky to be liked and love you guys right back.
You're in our trench.
You're in the trench. You are. Yes.
As long as we have some chocolate in the trench.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? What happens to the person who eats the last piece of chocolate in the trench?
That's a problem. They have to go get some more. And if they come under fire, then that's what they chose to do.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Lee. This was really lovely. We really appreciate your advice. And in the show notes, we're going to put links to Lee's site, all of her amazing stuff. She's got a couple great books, and her screenwriting support group, and all the other coaching stuff and the things that she does. But she also has taught some amazing symposiums for us. So we will link to those as well. And I'm sure you still have articles on Script Magazine, don't you?
I'm sure I do. I haven't looked at them in a while, but
a million.
They're all there. They're all there. And I'll just say it, back in my writer store days, I remember selling your book, or always recommending getting it right all the time to people. It's like, you must have this. Again, and if you don't know who Lee is, get out from under that rock, figure it out. Will help you.
I will end it on who the fuck am I, but
right.
Exactly. And it all comes back. Reckless Creatives is a Pipeline Artists original podcast. Like, subscribe, and follow us on social media at Pipeline Artists. And find more info at pipelineartists.com/listen. Until next time, stay reckless.